Alarm and with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Preview Show. We have a 9-game main slate, breaking it all down for everybody, closing out the week on a Friday. James, how we doing?
Happy freaking Friday, John.
Get it.
Hopefully my dogs don't start barking. That would be super unfortunate for the show because they're big and they're loud. But alas, we made it. It's Friday. TGIF. Usually you get a TGIF drop in there, but you're a little behind the 8 ball, I guess, today. You know, you've been busy cooking up the NBA DFS playbook over at fantasyalarm.com today. So I'm sure, you know, that's at the forefront of your mind as Cracker Jack pops in the chat. I actually have the door locked right now. That's because I have kids that are awake. And when John and I record, the kids are not awake, so I can keep the door open. So the dogs can roam in and out. So you will not be seeing the dog. Every so often, he punches the door when he's locked out of a couple of rooms. So you may hear the door being punched, but
and occasionally Zeus is listening in, and he'll let us know his favorite play by a bark.
Correct. That has always been a staple of Zeus too. That's for sure.
It's true. Yeah. So be on the lookout for that, as well as maybe we'll have an appearance of some pooches here. It is Gotcha Day for my dog Emma, but she's too small to even show up on screen. Got her 4 years ago, so we got Emma's little adoption day here today. We're gonna go celebrate, give her a pup cake. I go to PetSmart, give her some turkey bacon and an egg for breakfast. You know, she gets a little treat here. You know, on her adoption days there. So you know,
spoiled.
Oh yeah, big time. So. But that's that. We have 9 games to talk about with tonight's NBA slate here, and some interesting lines, some interesting totals moving as well here, James, from this morning. Obviously, everybody is looking at this Charlotte-Washington game all over again with the 240 plus total. But a game that I liked, and a game that you and I kind of went back and forth on, and we'll discuss this a little bit more in depth at the point guard position. I thought the OKC game against the Kings was going to be a little bit interesting, and Vegas or the public kind of agrees because that total is now up to 231, open at 225. So we have like a 6-point move on that line there from the very beginning of its open, and the spread is starting to come down. It's getting closer to a pick. It was the Thunder is like a 2.5 3-point favorite. Now it's down to 1.5. So close game, late total, late night hammer with SGA involved here. And again, you and I kind of went back and forth on the merits of LaMelo versus SGA, and obviously it's a slower spot and yada, yada, yada. But, you know, as those games get closer and totals and spreads, you know, I think becomes a bit more of a viable play here. But overall, some interesting movement, some guys being in and some guys being ruled out. It looks like Zion Williamson will be present here today, missing just the 1 game for the birth of his child. Anthony Davis looks like he's ready to go as well. For tonight's slate after, being ruled out last time the other night and missed against the Rockets and then missing half that game due to the injury against Miami. He should be go here against the Suns. Bradley Beal is in tonight for the Suns, his second game. And, you know, based off some reports, he could see that minute ceiling raised a little bit. You know, we're waiting on news for guys like Alperen Şengün and a few other key plays here tonight. So as the news breaks throughout the show here, we'll have it for you. We'll update it for you. And we're going to continue to give you our thoughts and analysis on each position and game as we go across it. Any opening thoughts for you here, James?
Yeah, I mean, it has been kind of eye-popping to see the OKC Sacramento movement and the Clippers Mavericks movement. John, I don't know if you saw that. Open at 231.5. Some places it's at 237.5.
Yeah.
So, like, massive movement in Clippers Dallas, obviously. A game I think you and I are going to not talk a lot about because it's hard to get to the Clippers. It's hard to get to Luka. Maybe there's an opening for some Dallas value if some big men in Dallas are ruled out because I believe last I looked, Lively and Kleba are both still questionable or doubtful. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting spots. I don't think the Cleveland-Washington game is interesting because they're now priced appropriately. Like last game, I feel like everyone was too cheap, and I think the ownership reflected that. And tonight, they bumped everybody's price in that game. Like nobody is cheap anymore, at least on DraftKings. LaMelo Ball still probably a little too cheap over on FanDuel. But yeah, there's definitely it's definitely a tough slate. I think I messaged you and we joined this room at the same exact time. As you joined, I said, this is a difficult slate because as of right now, we don't have much like concrete value. And I'm confident in the slate. I'm just saying, like, we've had definitive value.
Yeah.
Say nightly, right? Like, we know Jordan Hawkins is starting without a Zion Williamson, or we've had Christian Wood starting the other night. And not to say that went well, but there's been like concrete value to go to based on injuries. As of right now, if everything is stagnant and like Şengün plays,
right,
it's gonna be an interesting slate because you're really gonna have to. It's a critical thinking slate, in my opinion, and a fun one. So I'm ready to.
Well, we like that often because it means that maybe the consensus isn't all on that same one value play because there's not too many. Now it can also flip the other way, and we'll talk about some of the guys that we are on for values, and the playbook is already updated and published here for everybody to go check that out on FantasyStar now. I have some value options written up in the value section and in our player pool grid that you can go find there as well. And maybe some of those plays will be popular. One of the ones we highlighted on the program this morning, tweeted out the clip of that as well, with Santi Aldama, $4,900 for Memphis. I know he's a guy that we're both high on this evening. And when you go look at some of the rostership here for this evening, kind of due to the lack of overall volume and then the role that he played in that game the other night, playing the 25, I think it was, minutes or something in that range here. You do some people kind of getting to that spot here tonight with that Memphis Utah game being another popular play. So again, we'll cover all the value, we'll cover each position, and we'll get into it as well. Any other totals or spreads that you want to highlight here?
I'll just throw out a spread, and we're hopefully we'll learn what the Brooklyn starting lineup is pre-lock. That game's at 7:30. With the news, Ben Simmons being out, Cam Johnson returning, that is a 12-point spread. Al Horford also sitting in that game for Boston. I don't think that moves the needle at all, really, in the Boston side of things. But 12-point spread in Boston. This was a competitive game. Remember, tonight is the in-season tournament. Boston revealing their brand new in-season tournament court, which is interesting. But 12-point spread, that is the most risky in terms of blowout. So that's the only other thing I'd like to mention here.
Sure. All right. Let's get into tonight's slate here, breaking down position by position. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Faisal popping in. Good morning or good afternoon, fellas.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Good afternoon. Everyone got bumped with Jordan Poole. Yeah, that's because Jordan Poole did not have a bump-worthy game last time out here, but maybe that makes him a value play on this slate. We'll certainly get into that, and then Crackjack saying here, let's kick some ass tonight. That is certainly the hope. Last night was certainly an interesting slate here, and hopefully we can get things going on tonight's slate here as well. As I go and click all the wrong buttons to get us going here. All right, DraftKings slate preview. Point guard position. You mentioned the movement on Luka. Luka is not getting a lot of love here tonight. A lot of people are trending towards that Charlotte Washington matchup or Joel Embiid. But as that total goes up and that spread comes down, Luka at home, we certainly know what he's capable of. You have SGA at 10.5, LaMelo Ball 10K, your top three price guards. You and I kind of went a little bit back and forth in where we like going with our guard spot. I still maintain, I think, for tournaments, I like SGA as a pivot off of LaMelo Ball on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you laughed when you saw the FanDuel price on LaMelo Ball. He's only $9,100 on FanDuel. You absolutely have to play him over on FanDuel. It is a $2,000 difference between the two on FanDuel, the LaMelo Ball and SGA. On DraftKings, it's $500. So a very reasonable price for a pivot to SGA. But talk to me why you like Ball this evening. Like, obviously, the price bumped up, but you still think that there's still a chance for him to exceed value at 10K.
So would it shock you if my opinion on this has switched? Because I'm more on your side.
Okay, good. As the day where we're at then.
as the day has progressed. And I think you pointed it out, you laid it out perfectly. Like, we're talking about a price difference that is minuscule at this point. And maybe that $500 does matter on this slate because there is not a lot of value. And that's always like a factor, I think, when building our lineups. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, John, who's one of the best players in the NBA, he was second team All NBA last year. He was my sleeper to win the MVP just based on like the odds plus 1,800 to start the year. I mean, he's less than 2% projected rostership for a guy at 10-5 in a game you already profiled is on the rise in terms of game total. And that's not to say that Charlotte's total is not great because it's the slate high 239.5, 240, wherever you're looking. We just saw LaMelo go for 50 plus. We've seen him go for 70 plus 2 games ago. But like you're getting 1/15 the ownership on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who you did point out, like has had a more consistent ceiling than LaMelo this year, has had a more consistent floor than LaMelo. And like they play the same minutes. They both play big minutes. So there's no, that's neutral. Like that's a throwaway. Yeah, obviously you're going to play LaMelo on FanDuel because that's just significantly better value. But on DraftKings, I mean, SGA is money in the bank. We're talking about a guy who has infinite upside everywhere. He scores as well as anybody in the league. This is he's a better scorer than LaMelo Ball is overall. He gets the free, like there's no downside to playing a guy who's 1/15 the ownership with a equally high, if not higher ceiling in tournaments. In arguably a game that's similar, like the total has obviously shrunk. So I think in situations where you're talking about cash games, like, yeah, I still think LaMelo Ball is the safer option of the two. But if you're talking tournaments and you want leverage, I'm on your side of this. I obviously, like you said, we had the debate on the pod last night. I'm on your side for tournaments. And that's what you and I have largely been discussing. Like we discussed tournaments, and we've, I think, both become better tournament players this year, especially. I like the SGA argument in a really good, in a pretty good game environment here.
Yeah, I'm with you again. Just the pivot with the upside and the consistency that we've been seeing out of him this year is just really too hard to argue. When you move down into the mid tier, you have Tyrese Maxey going up against Detroit at $8,100. Fred VanVleet's in that range at 75 against a Pelicans game, which might be a bit more competitive with Zion now playing. And then Bradley Beal's at 7K. Again, there's some expectation that maybe he sees a little increase in playing time. If he gets to 30 minutes tonight at 7K, I think there's some viability there.
Yeah, I think all three of those guys are fine. No reason not to like Houston has a nice pace-up spot against New Orleans. VanVleet's been pretty good when the games have stayed competitive outside of, I would say, the Golden State game. He's shown a massive ceiling. This is Fred VanVleet in a nutshell. Like he has a massive ceiling. Especially when he makes shots because he's very good peripherally.
Right.
Maxey, no problem getting to Maxey. He's good everywhere. It's a great matchup against Detroit. 46. I mean, he's gotten less than 46 fantasy points once, and yet he got up to 8,400. Now he's $300 less than that point, despite going 46-50 or 46-46-50 his last 3 games. That doesn't make any sense to me. Plays in blowouts, plays big minutes no matter what, is clearly the 1B option to Joel Embiid, right? It's not even like 1 and 2. Like Maxey just is 1B. It's like Harden and Embiid's been in years past. And then, I mean, I think I'm a little indifferent on Beal. If we were to hear like 30 minutes, if the ramp up was 30 plus, like 30, 32, then sure, 7K is probably too cheap. Still not a great matchup. The Lakers, where do we sit for pace for the Lakers? They're slow. 22nd in pace. I'm indifferent on that because where's Phoenix in pace? They're both like lower tiered pace teams. I don't think this is like the maximum Bradley Beal spot in my opinion.
All right, when we go on down below for some value on the DraftKings slate, mid-tier range. You and I go back and forth a lot of times about trusting players. Marcus Sasser is someone that's obviously popped up on the scene, wasn't playing, then all of a sudden injuries happened. Last 5 games, getting the playing time forward the last 5, over 30 fantasy points, a 35 fantasy point game, a 38 fantasy point game last time out. But he's not 4,500 anymore. He's 58. The idea here is, though, if this was Jordan Clarkson, we'd be like, oh, Jordan Clarkson, 5,800. Look what he's done the last couple of games. We're all in. And we just name value. We registered because we know consistency's been there over the course of his career. Sasser's new rookie in the league, right? We're not sure about the consistency level of him, but he's getting blowout run and he's getting the minutes because no Burks and no Ivy here. The man's clearly a bucket, is this just what he is at $5,800? If that's the case, you're getting over 6x return on him in 4 of the last 5 games.
I'm very indifferent here. Okay. And here's why. So we look over at our good friends at Popcorn Machine. Okay.
Sure.
Marcus Sasser clearly caught some sick virus in the second half of last game where he just made every shot, right? Like he made every shot. The first half of that game, John, he came in at the 5:46 mark in the first quarter, got subbed out for defense purposes, I'm assuming, at the 18-second mark, then just played a 2-minute, 30-second stint, subbed out, played another 2-minute stint, and then didn't come back. So he played 9 first half minutes. And sure. I understand he played 28 minutes and he played the final 18 minutes of the game, which is great. But what if Marcus Sasser plays 9 minutes again in the first half and then in the second half doesn't shoot the way he did the last game? Like, that's my worry, that they'll just go back to Killian Hayes, because Killian Hayes saw his minutes kind of bumped because the Sasser news, and he hadn't had them bumped in that Golden State game because there was no Jalen Duren. And right. Then Jalen Duren comes back, and they're not playing 3 guards because they're playing Jalen Duren. If Sasser does not hit shots, it's kind of like the Mo Wagner thing from last night with Jonathan Isaac. And you were like, oh, was John Isaac in there last night or the game before when Mo Wagner closed? And I was like, no. And then John Isaac gets checked back in for Mo Wagner with 4 minutes left. And you're like, wow, that's kind of a big deal, because now like where you thought Mo Wagner, who had a great end of that game, would have closed, doesn't close, right? Because it's like, this piece that wasn't there last time is now there. So I would say I'm a little indifferent on Sasser. I'm not necessarily getting there personally, but if he can continue to shoot the way he's going to shoot, he's going to find himself on the floor more often than not. It's just a matter of, do you think the 11 for 17, now that Jalen Duren's there and they're healthier, is like sustainable? I think that's the ultimate question.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, you look at the 11 for 17, you had the 9 for 16 here, and I think if this game blows out, he gets those minutes regardless. Sure. And we aren't really expecting Detroit to hang here against Philly. So, I think that there's still some interest, but at the $5,800 price tag, I think there's obviously a little bit more risk. When kind of looking at this spot, he is not going highly rostered tonight, I think, because the price bump. But on a slate where there isn't a ton of value, does that mean like you would prefer maybe Killian Hayes as a safer option then? You think at the worst, Killian Hayes plays 29 minutes. At the best, he's playing 40 in a game that maybe Detroit surprises here?
Yeah, I would say I lean Hayes in this matchup, just knowing that like it seems like even if Sasser doesn't make shots, Killian Hayes is going to be the one playing the 34 minutes. So and he's 400 cheaper. So and we've talked about Killian now for multiple states in a row. He's just been very consistent. And on a slate where there's not a lot of guys that are legit value plays that are playing 30 plus minutes and accruing stats, I'm okay getting to Killian Hayes in this slate for sure.
Cracker wants to know for cash games, are we going SGA or Ball?
LaMelo.
Yeah,
LaMelo
on FanDuel, definitely LaMelo because it's $9,100. On DraftKings, the roster, the chalk is still probably LaMelo. Yep. So I'm fine going there, but I think both are fine plays. And then we haven't played a lot of Mike Conley this season. Anthony Edwards has obviously been such a great play here. Where is Conley even priced at these days? $4,800. Thoughts for Faisal here on Conley? 4 straight games over 20 fantasy points for him here. Obviously just 21 minutes because of the blowout against the Pelicans, but playing 30 plus minutes most nights here.
So I have Mike Conley in my lineup as it stands. Like, he's currently in my build. He has 1 turnover this year, John. 1 singular turnover. That's it. He has turned the ball over in game number 1, hasn't turned the ball over since. He's been really consistent around the offense. He also has a 12% usage rate this year, and he's not taking any shots.
He's kind of like falling into the Kyle Lowry role.
He is. Right? He is falling into like Kyle Lowry-ish territory. The rebounds are really hard to come by for him, obviously, with the vacuums that they have. The shot attempts in general are hard to come by. But you saw in a competitive setting in Boston, now there was overtime. So 31 minutes seems to be the cap for Mike Conley in regulation. If he gets 30 minutes, there's 30 fantasy point upside. I just don't know how. Like, if Minnesota shows up like they have, they're gonna blow San Antonio out tonight.
Right. Well, that's my worry. I worry that this game's over and Conley plays 21 minutes. Like that's where my hesitations come a bit on this matchup here. I don't have much exposure to this game. I have Anthony Edwards in the playbook because I think it's possible that he goes for 40 plus in the time it takes him to play 3 quarters before he sits out. So who knows? They're at home. So, I mean, maybe Wemby at home plays better. Vassell, Keldon now all in the lineup here for the Spurs. Maybe they just hang around and be more competitive than we would expect them to be. And this one turns into a game where nobody's playing and it's a low rostered spot there. Any other value for point guard for you here? Keontae George is actually shooting guard only on FanDuel, but he is a point guard here on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think the George thing is interesting on DraftKings, and I don't like the price bump. You and I talked about it on the podcast. And Albert, we just literally had like a 5-minute discussion about Sasser. So if you want to just,
I'll give you the too long didn't read version. I like him for tournament pivots. Nobody's really playing him tonight. Big price bump, but there could be some consistency issues. We think that Killian Hayes could just be a safer play down, but in GPPs, Sasser obviously showed you a 38 fantasy point ceiling. That's almost 7x what his price is tonight. So fine, but not our favorite because of the price increase.
Yes, exactly. The back to George thing, definitely like the minutes, definitely like the start. Don't like the price. I think that's like very evident. He was pretty chalky after announced the starter last time against Indiana at a great spot. John, he had 11% usage rate in that game, which is obviously not great. The assists were great. He is their point guard of the future. He was their first round pick. They made the swap to the lineup that they did. Like, there's shot opportunities in that lineup for Keontae George. Like, would it be shocking to see him shoot 10 times? I think this game is kind of sneaky. Like, they're both tops 8 in pace. Utah 7th.
You saw our lineup that I put out there. I have a full game stack of this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great game environment. Like 7th and 8th in pace, and then you look. Yeah, Memphis is like a little decent on defense, which is surprising because they've been bad. Utah's not, so like a lot of expected points in this game. I'm okay getting to Keontae George. I
honestly, if you wanted to go do like I don't look it up now because sometimes I like to throw some dollar bills on double props. This could be a double game for Keontae George. I'm going to see what the double on Keontae George pays out here tonight.
Good luck getting logged out of DraftKings.
No. I got multi-tabs open. We're okay.
And head over to our affiliate at BetMGM. They probably have something good.
Well, we're already on DraftKings here, so
that's fair. That's fair.
It's too late for that. But listen, I agree with you. I think we saw 9 assists in a game they lost by 20. I think this game's going to be more competitive. So does Vegas think it's going to be more competitive as well? And look what his assist totals were in the limited playing time.
Right. 4
assists in 21 minutes, 4 assists in 27, 3 in 17. So there's definitely the potential for him to get 10 plus assists here tonight. Let's see. Is that player combos probably? Player combos, doubles, Keontae George. Scrolling down, Keontae George, double prop. Oh, they didn't even give it to me. Oh, those SOBs. We got Jaren Jackson at 205. Lauri Markkanen at plus 100. So they're locking in the Lauri Markkanen prop there. I got to find a Keontae George double prop. I'm sure there's somewhere abound, but I do like Keontae George here as well at the price point. Obviously got a little bit of a boost up in price, but I think a double is really in play tonight in this spot.
How about this? Mike Conley is coming in as the highest rostered point guard tonight. or Keontae George at 21% less? Which would you rather play?
Keontae George.
Agreed. I agree on that. I do think Conley is fine for cash. Like if you want to play Mike Conley as your like, if that's where you land in cash games, because again, we've talked about it. There's not a lot of value. Like you can go to Mike Conley. He's safe. It's a really good matchup. There's steal upside with San Antonio. They turn the ball over a lot. Like there's some of that for Conley. But also when you look at Keontae George, Sean, he played just 1 year in college, took 12 shots per game and scored 15 points per game. Like this is a kid who can score the basketball, just finding his footing.
There are no props for Keontae George. That's just what the problem is here.
Well,
they're just not out there.
Well, message, get involved.
You gotta start tweeting at people. Where's my Keontae George lines at? All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe when the starting lineup comes out, they'll throw some props out there for everybody. Let's go on over to the shooting guard position. Again, I mentioned already, I think I'm fine going with Anthony Edwards if you want to get there in this spot. He's 9K now. We opened the year, he's up over 9K, popped a little bit down to 8, back up to 9, giving you a ceiling, giving you the 50 plus. So 50 plus at 9K, you're getting a little less than 5x. That's 54 is 9, so there's the 5x return. But you got 61 here. Again, I'm fine going there if you want. Brandon Ingram's 87 against Houston. Zion back here. Are you worried about the price and the matchup here for Ingram?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Zion back, it obviously presents a better game for us if we wanted to look at it like that. But I don't think I'm going to get the 8,700 Ingram. That's a little too steep. Also, Edwards is like Edwards has a ceiling, but I feel a little I don't know, like Edwards, like you're basically prioritizing like one spend up tonight. That's like all you can afford unless there's value that opens up in Houston.
I mean, it depends on what you're willing to play in the 5K range, I think.
Sure.
Desmond Bane, $8,500 is going to be popular play tonight.
Yep.
We saw him pop for 67 against Portland. In Utah, he had 27 fantasy points in 21 minutes, 27 minutes rather. Well on his way to a big night, but that was the blowout game where they lost. So $8,500 for him. And now you look who's going to be on the floor against them, right? Keontae George, Jordan Clarkson, Agbaji. I mean, that's a little bit of a different lineup. It's not THT out there, checking them up. So I do like Bane a lot in this spot. Anybody else for you in this top tier?
No. Blanket statement, Cade being a tournament play. I don't hate if you think Detroit can keep this game close, Cade's playing 40 minutes a night. If you can find value pairing him with Embiid or pairing him with Maxey could be just like 100-point baseline with just 2 players, right?
Agreed here. Let's see. Moving on down. Oh yeah, we had the Jordan Poole question already. Played 20 minutes in that blowout loss.
Brutal.
Just terrible. Blowout win rather. Hasn't really been great, but 72 does pay off 36 and 37. So we've seen him give us 5x, but it's only been like 5x. So is this a ceiling potential for Poole here?
I mean, it's definitely a potential. It's a great spot. It's just when will the shots fall? Like they're 28th in defense. They got They got torched by this Washington team without Jordan Poole scoring. And once again, it's like Washington's first in pace, Charlotte's fourth in pace. You don't often get these teams that are so highly maxing possessions basically like this, and that's why you see the game total. If you want to play Jordan Poole, play Jordan Poole. It's a really risky play, but he has a ceiling. Like as much as we want to crap on Jordan Poole and how bad he's played, because he has, and as someone who is heavily invested in Jordan Poole this fantasy season, and I'm disappointed, I'm very disappointed, but has a ceiling. We saw 41 actual in a preseason game in 3 quarters. I'm not saying this is going to be the spot, but if there was ever a spot, like I said the last time, that Jordan Poole is going to break out, it feels like it's against one of the worst defensive units in basketball.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, everybody else kind of got pumped except for him. So that's where maybe the value lies potentially in this matchup for him if he's the one that ends up going off. Jordan Clarkson rather is one of my favorite plays here.
Yep.
Austin almost just slipped out there. With the R, the Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson's my guy here. Jordan Clarkson, a big fan of him here this evening. As I mentioned and in my write-up, You looked at the new look starting lineup for them, and they took off a guy in Talon Horton-Tucker had taken 20 shots basically the game before. Now you look at Keontae George and Agbaji, not two guys that aren't really expected to shoot, and therefore Clarkson took 26 shots in that starting lineup. Markkanen obviously took a lot of shots here. I like this spot for him against Memphis in that game against Memphis. Played just 26 minutes due to the blowout. Had 20 actual, had 39.5 fantasy points. So Jordan Clarkson at $6,400 is a core play for me tonight.
Yeah, is a 40% usage rate good?
Okay,
that's what he had in that. He is now the usage rate leader as well.
He usually is, right?
Yeah, overthrew Laurie.
I'll never forget those years he was coming off the bench for the Lakers as their leader in usage rate, and we're can we just give him a play? What are we doing here?
I like 21 minutes a game. It wasn't even like anything like to write home about.
Just show you how long we've been doing this. We're talking about Clarkson's first stint in LA.
True. True. I love the Jordan Clarkson. You know what you're going to get. Like, there is a high ceiling, there's a low floor with Jordan Clarkson, but with this starting lineup, and you alluded to it on the podcast this morning, like, there are shots to be had for anybody that wants to take them, because Keontae George and Ochai Agbaji are not exactly your most offensively, like, their foot forward is to, like, Keontae had 9 assists, Agbaji can space the floor, but he's not out there looking for 20 shots a game. So expect Clarkson's usage rate to continue to be sky high here.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. You mentioned liking Jalen Green. Has anything changed for you there?
No, I think he's fine. 6,300 is too cheap. He had 45 fantasy points in 21 minutes his last time. Like, Jalen Green's a bucket, dude. Like, that's what he does. And we've always just kind of been like, okay, well, we need more than that to, like, pay off price tags in the past. But his price tag is not moving. He's been 61 to 64 every slate this year. And he's gone for 32 fantasy points and 5 of 7 games with a 45-point ceiling. So yeah, he's fine. This game should be more competitive. If there's no Şengün, I think we are going to like Houston a whole lot more, like on.
Well, it's a pace up play for Houston.
Yes.
So that helps as well.
Like the offense is running through Şengün, right? Like he's the hub for this team right now. He's a mini Jokic. If there's no Şengün, like, yeah, we're gonna flock to whoever the fifth starter is, whether it's Jock Landale or Jayshawn Tate or maybe Tari Eason if there's like a big enough minutes bump. But like Jalen Green is going to have a lot more opportunity. Fred VanVleet's going to have a lot more opportunity. Like, there's just a lot to like if Şengün sits. I don't want Şengün to sit because, well, actually, maybe I'm a little indifferent there because we need something to open up. But I could definitely see myself like gravitating right to like John. I'm looking at this right per 36 minutes. No Alperen Şengün this year for Jalen Green. 52 fantasy points per 36 minutes. That is that is elite. 1.46 fantasy points per minute. 55-minute sample is a 55-minute sample. That's not like a ton, but he leads the team in fantasy points per minute without Şengün. So
we did just get a rostership update here that'll be uploaded to the site momentarily. Jalen Green is your 10th highest rostered player on the slate. So people are definitely getting to him. However, there are 2 other shooting guards similarly priced that are also in that same range for rostership. One of those guys just below him in Malik Monk. I think the lineup, the total movement is putting some more people on this game because it's Malik Monk and it's Kevin Huerter down here at $5,400. Both Kings guards along with Jalen Green are pretty much sitting right next to each other in rostership here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the Monk thing is incredibly interesting because we know what Malik Monk is. He's not going to start. He might not, like, he got 30 minutes last game. There was overtime that got him 5 minutes. So he plays 25 minutes again in regulation, right? Like, it does not go past 25 minutes. Like, with Malik Monk, he is going to play 25 minutes or so, and he's going to take a bunch of shots, and obviously they didn't start Davion Mitchell, so there was more playmaking opportunity for Malik Monk. They started Keon Ellis.
I think that's what it is too. Not starting Davion and starting Ellis instead puts just a different floor together, right? Yep. So, who's out there with, and the way that they run that rotation now, and because they didn't play Keon more than like 20 minutes in that game, right? Yep. So that could have a little bit to do with it as well.
They also, which I find interesting, John, did not close with Keegan Murray. He did not play.
It was not his best game. We did talk about it.
He shot terribly, but he did not play after the 3:19-minute mark in the fourth. So he didn't, except for like a couple second stint in the fourth and overtime. So they to expect that to happen again if Keegan Murray shoots the ball reasonably well. I mean, what do you think the most likely outcome for a Kings closing lineup is if if Keegan's shooting the ball reasonably well?
Are they up or down? Because
they're up.
If they're up, Davion Mitchell will close because he'll check SGA in this game. Probably Horder, Keegan, Barnes, and Sponis.
And I think that's the problem for me getting to Monk. I get it because he has a ceiling in short stints, even when he doesn't close. But I would just rather play Horder. I mean, the minutes have trended upwards for Kevin Horder. 35 minutes essentially in regulation in this Portland game. He finally is shooting the ball better. 3 made threes in back-to-back games. That was what was eluding Kevin Horder this offseason and preseason, and what led to him almost getting benched. I would just rather save $600 going to Horder off Malik Monk. I can understand getting to Monk, but you just said, I'm surprised there's so much ownership gravitating towards him. I would rather just play Horder at similar ownership when I have more confidence he's going to close a game and he's $600 cheaper.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Again, that's just kind of where they're all going around that 15 to 20% rostership here for this evening. Any other value shooting guards? I mean, Derek White's down here, Jordan Hawkins is down here, and then of course our guy Luke Kennard's $4,300. He's getting a lot of love tonight as well.
Yeah, definitely like Derek White if you think that he's going to play 30 minutes, right? In the blowouts, in the 2 games that they've blown people out, he's played 27 and 24 minutes, and he's essentially got you there in both. But I like Derek White to get full run because he's not always going to take 18 shots in a game. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I think Horford being out probably gives Derek White a few more minutes in this game because those two have been linked, right? Who's going to start? It was Derek White or Al Horford. That was the link. So I think Horford being out, they don't play anybody off the bench. Hauser is your most likely to get minutes, but I don't think Hauser's impacted by the Horford news all that much. I think Derek White. So
I almost put Sam Hauser in the value section of the playbook tonight. Believe it or not, Hauser's actually in their rotation. He's their 20-minute man off the bench, and he's just a 3-point shooter. So kind of like Luke Kennard. If Hauser goes out there and plays 22 minutes but hits 4 of his 8 threes, he's also giving you a couple of rebounds, and he's giving you steals in 4 straight games. So, Sam Hauser, if you're really looking to just get stars and scrubby tonight, you could probably lock him in for a minimum of 18 to 20 minutes. And then if that game blows out or foul trouble or whatever, he's playing more. So, I didn't include Sam Hauser in the playbook because I wasn't ready to really take that leap. But, I think if you're going stars and scrub, you're fitting in LaMelo and Embiid tonight or something like that. Hauser is a guy that at least the minutes are there for him.
I don't hate it. I wish he was playing a little. Seems like because he's in the rotation, he's kind of not playing the blowout run because they've scored 155 points and he only played 20 minutes. I wish he was, but maybe there is a couple extra minutes. I mean, there's 20 plus minutes to go around with Horford being out. I think White does see a couple more, but Hauser could definitely see some. I think Kennard could be in line for a really big night in terms of minutes if we get the Contra news and the Zaire Williams news. Those are actually 2 underrated pieces of news that we are waiting for. Contra is questionable. He's missed the last 2 games, and Kennard's played his most 2 minutes during that span. And Zaire Williams only played 21 minutes in that Miami game and is now, questionable. So Kennard could play 30 minutes tonight with both those guys out, and it wouldn't surprise me.
No.
If they're both in, I'm probably a little more tentative, saying that like we're gonna get 30 minutes out of Kennard. But like he's been probably the best of the three, like in terms of spacing. I mean, he's hit 7 threes his last 2 games. Like they need spacing on that team. I mean, Bane's a good shooter, but Smart's been pretty bad shooting, and Jaren Jackson's an inconsistent shooter, so they could use Luke Kennard in the lineup.
Depends. Yeah, I do like his FanDuel price. He's only $6,400 over there, so similar to his DraftKings pricing.